People like you need to move to the back. The scalding coffee cascaded down Amara's hair, soaking through her cotton sweater. Jennifer's manicured hand slipped as she poured, the dark liquid dripping onto designer jeans that cost more than the flight attendant's weekly paycheck. Oops. These accidents happen when people sit where they don't belong. Jennifer's smile stayed frozen as passengers turned to stare. Amara Washington sat motionless in seat 2A, her paid seat, coffee pooling in her lap. The humiliation was intentional, complete, public. Phone cameras emerged. Jennifer straightened her uniform, satisfied with her performance. But she didn't notice the platinum credit card peeking from Amara's soaked wallet, or the business card floating in the coffee puddle, CEO and founder. Have you ever been judged so wrong that one call could destroy everything? The coffee burned against Amara's scalp, but she didn't flinch, didn't wipe her face, didn't give Jennifer the reaction she wanted. Michael? Jennifer's voice carried across the cabin like a dinner bell. We have a situation in first class. The senior flight attendant appeared within seconds, his pressed shirt and captain's pins announcing his authority. His eyes swept over Amara, dripping, disheveled, clearly out of place in his pristine cabin. What seems to be the problem? Michael's tone suggested he already knew the answer. This passenger is refusing to move to her correct seat assignment. Jennifer dabbed at a non-existent coffee stain on her own uniform. I've explained the mix-up, but she's being difficult. Amara reached into her wet bag and produced her boarding pass. The paper was coffee-stained but legible. Seat 2A, first class. Michael examined it like a detective studying evidence. Ma'am, our system shows you purchased an Economy Plus ticket. This appears to be a printing error. Your system is wrong. Our system doesn't make mistakes. His smile was patronizing, practiced. But we can arrange an upgrade for a small fee. Say, $400? The woman in seat 3C had started filming on Instagram, her phone capturing every word. Her whispered commentary leaked through, "Y'all, this is insane. They're literally trying to charge her for her own seat." Amara pulled out her frequent flyer card platinum status, elite member since 2018. Michael's expression flickered, but only slightly. Even platinum members can have booking errors, he said, handing it back without really looking. We need additional verification for first-class seating. What kind of verification? Credit card used for purchase. Identification. Proof of income level consistent with premium cabin travel. The last part hung in the air like smoke. Proof of income level. The businessman in floor 1F looked up from his Wall Street journal, eyebrows raised. Even he seemed uncomfortable with that requirement. Amara's phone buzzed against the wet fabric of her jeans, a text from her assistant. Board meeting moved to 3 p.m. Delta offering their jet if AA continues delays. She ignored it. Are you asking all first-class passengers for proof of income? Amara's voice remained level, curious rather than confrontational. Michael's cheeks flushed slightly. We ask when there are discrepancies. What discrepancies? Jennifer jumped in. Ma'am, you're holding up boarding. Other passengers are waiting. It was true. The economy cabin stretched behind them, filled with travelers checking their watches. But the filming passenger in 3C had other ideas. Actually, I'm not in a hurry, she announced loudly. This is way more interesting than my connecting flight. Her Instagram live viewer count had climbed to 247 people. Comments flooded the screen. This is discrimination. Sue them. What airline is this? The businessman in floor 1F quietly opened his laptop and began typing. His Twitter bio read, Aviation Industry Analyst, 2.3 million followers. Michael noticed the phones, the typing, the growing audience. His authority was becoming a spectacle. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside while we resolve this booking issue. I'll wait here. Amara settled deeper into her seat. In my assigned seat. You're creating a disturbance. I'm sitting quietly in a seat I purchased. If there's a disturbance, it's not coming from me. Jennifer's frustration was becoming visible. Her professional mask slipped as she leaned down, speaking low enough that the cameras couldn't catch her words, but loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Look, we're trying to be nice here. But you people always make everything so difficult. The cabin went silent. Even Michael stepped back, realizing Jennifer had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The Instagram Live comments exploded. The businessman's typing intensified. But Amara just smiled. A small, knowing smile that suggested she was exactly where she needed to be. She reached into her bag and pulled out a business card, somehow spared from the coffee disaster. The logo was subtle but distinctive, a stylized W with tech in smaller letters below. Perhaps, she said, offering the card to Michael, you should call your supervisor. Michael glanced at the card dismissively. The company name meant nothing to him. He handed it back without reading the title underneath the logo. Ma'am, my supervisor will tell you the same thing I'm telling you. Our system doesn't lie. The woman filming in 3C had zoomed in on the business card before Michael handed it back. Her viewers were already Googling WashTech. Her expression changed as search results populated. She mouthed, "Holy shit," to her camera. But Michael and Jennifer remained oblivious, focused on their perceived victory over a difficult passenger. They had no idea that the woman dripping coffee in seat 2A had signed a contract worth more than their annual salaries just last month. Or that 12 passengers were now filming what would become the most expensive discrimination incident in aviation history. Captain Harris emerged from the cockpit, his silver hair and 4 stripes commanding immediate attention. The boarding delay had reached 23 minutes long enough to trigger passenger compensation protocols and corporate attention. What's the holdup? His voice carried the authority of 30 years flying commercial aircraft. Jennifer straightened, smoothing her skirt. Passenger in 2A refuses to move to economy. Claims first-class ticket, but our system shows otherwise. Captain Harris looked down at Amara, still seated calmly despite the coffee staining her sweater. His assessment was swift, professional, and completely wrong. Ma'am, I understand your frustration, but we have 180 passengers waiting to depart. My crew follows company policy without exception. Your crew just told me I need to prove my income level to sit in a seat I purchased. Amara's tone remained conversational. Is that standard policy? Harris glanced at Michael, whose face had gone pale. Income verification wasn't in any manual. There seems to be some miscommunication. There's no miscommunication. Amara held up her boarding pass again. Seat 2A, purchased 3 days ago. Confirmation number AA847TWW. The Instagram live stream had reached 1,247 viewers. Comments flooded past faster than the woman in 3C could read them. Someone had identified the airline from the uniform logos. American Airlines discrimination was starting to trend. Harris noticed the phones, the growing crowd of digital witnesses. This situation was evolving beyond a simple seating dispute. Ma'am, would you be willing to discuss this privately? I prefer transparency. Amara gestured to the cabin around them. Everyone can hear how this gets resolved. That's when airport security arrived. Officers Rodriguez and Chang had been called for a disruptive passenger situation. They boarded with the casual confidence of professionals who handled difficult travelers daily. But the scene they encountered didn't match their expectations. The disruptive passenger sat quietly in her assigned seat, hands folded, speaking in measured tones. Around her, airline crew clustered like predators circling prey while passengers filmed the entire encounter. I'm Officer Rodriguez, Airport Security. We understand there's a seating dispute? Jennifer immediately launched into her version. She became belligerent when asked to verify her ticket. Started making accusations about discrimination when we followed standard verification procedures. Belligerent how? Rodriguez looked at Amara, noting her calm demeanor. Raising her voice, making demands, refusing to cooperate with crew instructions. The businessman in floor 1F looked up from his laptop. That's not what happened. I've been here the entire time. She hasn't raised her voice once. Jennifer's face flushed. Sir, please don't interfere with security procedures. Officer Chang had been watching the interaction carefully. Ma'am, he addressed Amara, can you show us your identification and boarding documents? Amara handed over her driver's license and boarding pass. Chang examined them thoroughly, more thoroughly than the airline crew had bothered to do. Everything appears to be in order. He looked at Rodriguez. Licensed to Amara Washington. Seat assignment matches the boarding pass. Harris stepped forward. Our computer system shows a different seat assignment. Then your computer system is wrong, the woman in 3C called out, holding up her phone. And 1,800 people are watching you figure that out. The viewer count had exploded. Someone had shared the stream on Twitter, where it was being retweeted by aviation industry accounts. Flight discrimination had joined the trending conversation. Rodriguez was growing uncomfortable. Airport security handled drunk passengers, medical emergencies, and actual threats. This looked more like corporate discrimination than a security issue. Captain, what exactly do you need from this passenger? Harris found himself trapped between his crew's version of events and the growing digital evidence that contradicted their story. We need to verify that her ticket wasn't fraudulently obtained. Based on what evidence of fraud? The question hung in the air. Harris had no answer that wouldn't sound discriminatory. Amara reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. The screen was cracked from Jennifer's heel, but it still functioned. She looked directly at Captain Harris. I'd like to make one phone call before we proceed further. Jennifer scoffed. A phone call won't change your seat assignment. You're absolutely right, Amara said, her finger hovering over a contact labeled simply, Legal Emergency. It won't change my seat assignment. But it will change other things. The confidence in her voice made Rodriguez step back slightly. Chang noticed it too, the subtle shift from defensive passenger to someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Harris felt the first flutter of real concern. The delay was approaching 30 minutes. Social media was documenting every word. His crew had used language that sounded discriminatory on camera, and now the passenger wanted to call a lawyer. Ma'am, perhaps we can resolve this without involving outside parties. Outside parties? Amara's eyebrow raised slightly. Captain, you called security on a paying passenger for sitting in her assigned seat. I think outside parties are already involved. The businessman in floor 1F had finished his Twitter thread documenting the incident. His 2.3 million followers were beginning to share it. The airline's social media team would start receiving notifications within minutes. Officer Rodriguez made a decision. Ma'am, you're free to make your phone call. This appears to be a civil matter, not a security issue. Jennifer and Michael exchanged glances. They had expected security to remove the difficult passenger, not validate her right to legal representation. Amara's thumb moved toward the call button. Around her, cameras captured the moment. Passengers leaned forward in their seats. The cabin had become a courtroom, and everyone was waiting for the verdict. One call, she said quietly, looking directly at Harris. Then we can discuss how American Airlines wants to handle this situation. The captain's radio crackled to life. Flight 2847, this is Operations Control. We're showing extended ground delay. Please advise status. Harris keyed the radio with sweaty fingers. Operations, we have a passenger services issue. Will advise shortly. He looked down at Amara, who was still holding her phone. For the first time since arriving from the cockpit, Captain Harris wondered if his crew had made a terrible mistake. Amara pressed the call button. The cabin fell silent except for the hum of auxiliary power and the distant sound of ground crews preparing other aircraft for departure. "This is Amara Washington," her voice carried clearly through the first-class cabin. "WashTech Industries, CEO." Captain Harris felt his stomach drop. That name. WashTech. It sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it. "I'm currently on American Airlines Flight 2847, and we need to discuss our partnership immediately." The businessman in floor 1F had stopped typing. His face had gone pale as he stared at his laptop screen, frantically scrolling through search results. "Yes, that's correct. The $847 million IT infrastructure contract we signed last month." Amara's voice remained calm, professional. "The one that handles all of American cybersecurity protocols." Jennifer's confident smirk began to falter. She pulled out her own phone, fingers flying across the screen. The Google results made her blood freeze. WashTech Industries, $2.3 billion net worth. Largest minority-owned technology firm in North America. Primary contractor for American Airlines cybersecurity infrastructure. And CEO Amara Washington, Forbes 40 Under 40. Technology Innovator of the Year. The woman currently sitting in seat 2A with coffee stains on her sweater. "I'll wait for your call to Captain Harris," Amara continued into her phone. "Flight 2847. Yes, I'll hold." The Instagram live comments exploded into chaos. Viewers were sharing screenshots of WashTech's corporate website, Amara's Forbes articles, news stories about the American Airlines partnership. The viewer count had hit 4,200 and climbing. Michael grabbed Jennifer's arm, hissing quietly, "Do you know who that is?" Jennifer's face had drained of all color. She was reading the same articles, seeing the same photos, realizing the magnitude of her mistake. Officer Rodriguez looked at his partner. "Chang, you ever heard of WashTech?" "The tech company? They handle cybersecurity for half the airlines in the country." Chang's expression shifted from professional neutrality to genuine concern. "If she's really the CEO..." Captain Harris's radio crackled to life before Chang could finish his sentence. "Captain Harris, this is David Chen, Senior Vice President of Operations. Please respond immediately." Harris keyed the radio with trembling fingers. "This is Harris." "Captain, you have Miss Amara Washington on your aircraft. The CEO of WashTech Industries, our largest vendor. Is this correct?" The cabin was so quiet that passengers in economy could hear the radio conversation. Harris looked down at Amara, who was still holding her phone patiently. "That appears to be correct." "Captain, whatever situation you have involving Ms. Washington needs to be resolved immediately and professionally. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "Transfer me to her immediately." Harris walked over to Amara, his entire demeanor transformed. "Miss Washington, our Senior Vice President, would like to speak with you." Amara took the radio with the same calm she'd maintained throughout the ordeal. "Mr. Chen, this is Amara Washington." "Miss Washington, I sincerely apologize for whatever misunderstanding has occurred. We're prepared to conduct an immediate investigation and implement corrective measures." "That's a start, David. But this isn't about misunderstanding." Amara's voice carried through the cabin radio system, reaching every passenger. "Your crew discriminated against me based on my appearance. They demanded income verification for a seat I purchased. They had airport security called because I refused to move from my assigned seat." The businessman in 1F was typing furiously again, his Twitter thread now including audio clips from the radio conversation. American Airlines discrimination was trending nationally. "One of your flight attendants poured coffee on my head and told me people like me don't belong in first class. 12 passengers have documented this incident across multiple social media platforms." Jennifer had sunk into a nearby seat, her career flashing before her eyes. Michael stood frozen, realizing that his supervisor authority meant nothing against a woman who controlled nearly $1 billion of their company's infrastructure. "Miss Washington," Chen's voice was strained. "What can we do to address this situation?" "We can start with the fact that tomorrow morning, WashTech announces our acquisition of 3 major airline IT contractors. Combined, we'll control 67% of domestic aviation cybersecurity." The cabin went silent. Even the passengers in economy had stopped talking. "Your operating systems, reservation networks, flight management computers, all dependent on infrastructure, my company either controls or will control within 6 months." Captain Harris felt dizzy. The woman his crew had humiliated didn't just work with American Airlines. She was about to control the technological backbone of the entire industry. "Mr. Chen, I have a cracked phone screen from your flight attendant's heel, coffee stains on clothes that cost more than your crew's monthly salary, and 4,800 people watching this conversation on social media." Amara's voice remained steady, but there was steel underneath. "How exactly do you propose to address this?" The radio crackled as Chen consulted with others. Passengers could hear muffled voices in the background. Lawyers, executives, crisis management teams, all scrambling to contain a situation that had spiraled beyond anyone's control. Officer Rodriguez quietly spoke to his partner. "We should probably call this into our supervisor." "Yeah," Chang agreed. "This is way above our pay grade." The woman in 3C was narrating the scene for her viewers. "Y'all, this is the most insane thing I've ever witnessed. They messed with the wrong person, like spectacularly wrong." Jennifer stood up slowly, her legs unsteady. She approached Amara with the desperate look of someone whose life was imploding in real time. "Miss Washington, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." "You didn't know what?" Amara's gaze was steady, unflinching. "That I was wealthy? That I was important? That I deserved basic human dignity?" Jennifer opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. The radio crackled again. "Miss Washington, this is Operations Control. We have our legal team standing by and senior executives en route to your location." Amara looked around the cabin at the cameras, the crew, the passengers who had witnessed everything. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of someone who had just changed the balance of power in commercial aviation. "Gentlemen, I think it's time we had a serious conversation about accountability." David Chen's voice returned through the radio, now accompanied by the unmistakable tension of a corporate crisis in full swing. "Miss Washington, I have our Chief Legal Officer and Vice President of Customer Relations on the line. We're prepared to discuss immediate remediation." Amara stood slowly, coffee-stained but commanding. The movement drew every eye in the cabin. She walked to the front of first class, the radio in her hand, transforming the airplane into her boardroom. "David, let's discuss numbers. Real numbers." She faced the cabin, speaking loud enough for every passenger and camera to hear clearly. WashTech provides American Airlines with $847 million annually in cybersecurity services. Our contract includes Section 12.4 strict diversity and inclusion compliance clauses. Breach of these terms triggers immediate contract review and potential termination. Captain Harris felt his knees weaken. $847 million. Nearly $1 billion contract at stake because his crew couldn't treat a passenger with basic dignity. Your IT infrastructure represents 23% of Americans' operational capacity. Our systems manage flight controls, reservation databases, passenger security protocols, and maintenance scheduling across 847 aircraft serving 350 airports. The businessman in Floor 1F was live tweeting every word. His followers included aviation industry executives, investment analysts, and transportation reporters. The story was spreading beyond social media into financial markets. A system shutdown would ground your entire fleet within 6 hours. Estimated revenue loss, $47 million per day. plus regulatory fines from the FAA and DOT. Jennifer had gone completely white. She was staring at her phone, watching her LinkedIn profile fill with notifications from aviation industry contacts who had seen the social media coverage, not including the $1.2 billion cybersecurity vulnerability exposure if our protective protocols went offline. Michael grabbed the nearest seat back for support. He was doing mental math, his annual salary, his pension, his mortgage payments, all dependent on the company staying solvent. Miss Washington. Chen's voice was tight. What are your immediate requirements? Amara pulled out her cracked phone and opened her notes app. The screen was damaged, but functional. DOT regulations require investigation of discrimination complaints within 72 hours. This incident, documented by 12 passengers across 4 social platforms with over 6,000 current viewers, qualifies as potential Title VII violation under federal civil rights law. Officer Rodriguez was quietly speaking into his radio, calling for his supervisor. This had evolved beyond airport security into a federal discrimination case with massive financial implications. Your carrier's operating certificate could face review by the FAA, but we can avoid that with concrete action. The cabin was silent except for the quiet hum of phones recording and the distant sound of other aircraft taxiing. Amara had transformed a humiliating discrimination incident into a corporate negotiation with 8-figure stakes. First requirement, Jennifer and Michael are suspended immediately, pending full investigation, non-negotiable. Jennifer stood up abruptly. You can't. This isn't fair. I made a mistake. You poured coffee on my head and told me people like me don't belong in first class. Amara's voice cut through Jennifer's protests. 6,000 people watched you do it. Fair doesn't enter the equation. Chen's voice crackled through the radio. Suspension authorized immediately. What else? Mandatory bias training for all 47,000 customer-facing employees within 30 days. Not optional sensitivity seminars. Comprehensive bias recognition and intervention training with certification requirements. Captain Harris was frantically calculating the cost. 47,000 employees, 30 days, certification programs, millions in training costs and lost productivity. Implementation of WashTech's Diversity Check app across your entire fleet. Real-time discrimination reporting system allowing passengers to document incidents instantly, with AI-powered analysis of customer service interactions. The woman in 3C was narrating for her viewers. She's basically rewriting how airlines handle discrimination in real time. This is incredible. Quarterly diversity metrics published in shareholder reports, third-party audited. No more hiding discrimination statistics behind corporate PR. Amara walked slowly down the aisle as she spoke, her presence commanding attention from every passenger. The coffee stains on her sweater had become a symbol of corporate accountability in action. $50,000 diversity scholarship fund established immediately. Annual $500,000 contribution to the National Association of Minority Aviation Professionals. Revenue sharing. 2% of profits from our partnership directed to minority business development. The numbers were staggering. Chen was consulting with lawyers and executives in the background. Passengers could hear muffled voices discussing legal liability, financial exposure, and reputation management. Public apology posted on all American Airlines social media channels within 6 hours, not a generic statement-specific acknowledgement of discriminatory treatment and concrete commitment to systematic change. Officer Chang approached Rodriguez quietly. Should we contact the FBI? This might qualify as a civil rights violation. Rodriguez nodded. Already called. They're sending someone. And one final requirement, Amara said, returning to the front of the cabin. A board seat for a minority aviation executive within 90 days. Not advisory voting member with full fiduciary responsibility. The radio went silent for nearly a minute. Chen was clearly consulting with the board of directors, legal counsel, and crisis management teams. The Instagram Live viewer count had hit 8,200. American Airlines. Discrimination was trending alongside #corporate accountability and #WashTech. Financial news outlets were picking up the story. Miss Washington, Chen's voice finally returned. These are significant commitments requiring board approval. David, you have a choice. Implement these changes voluntarily or explain to your shareholders why you lost a billion-dollar contract because your crew couldn't treat customers with basic dignity. Captain Harris keyed his radio. Operations, this is Harris. How long do we have for resolution? Harris, you have whatever time Ms. Washington needs. This is now our highest priority corporate incident. Amara looked around the cabin one final time at Jennifer, who was crying quietly in her seat, at Michael, who was staring at the floor, at the passengers who had witnessed corporate power dynamics shift in real time. I need written confirmation of these commitments before departure. Your legal team can contact mine at legal@washtech.com. Reference case number WT 2025 AA847 for all correspondence. She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. Failure to comply triggers automatic contract review at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. The same morning we announce controlling 67% of domestic aviation cybersecurity. The silence that followed was absolute. Jennifer's career was over. Michael's authority was meaningless. Captain Harris's flight was grounded until a discrimination complaint was resolved. And Amara Washington, still dripping coffee, had just rewritten the rules of corporate accountability in commercial aviation. The response came faster than anyone expected. Miss Washington, Chen's voice crackled through the radio. I have authorization from our board of directors to implement your requirements immediately. Within minutes, Operations Control had dispatched a supervisor to remove Jennifer from the aircraft. She walked down the aisle in silence, her uniform stripped of authority, her career in aviation effectively over. Passengers watched through their phone cameras as she disappeared into the jet bridge. Michael followed 10 minutes later, escorted by the same supervisor. His 30-year career with American Airlines reduced to a discrimination incident documented by thousands of witnesses. Patricia Williams, a senior flight attendant with 25 years of experience and diversity training certifications, boarded to replace them. Her first action was to personally apologize to Amara and offer fresh coffee, which Amara politely declined. The Instagram live stream had reached 12,400 viewers. Comments flooded past faster than anyone could read them, but the sentiment was clear. Justice being served in real time. American Airlines' official Twitter account posted an unprecedented statement within 4 hours. We sincerely apologize to Ms. Amara Washington for the unacceptable discriminatory treatment she received from our crew on Flight 2847. Effective immediately, we are implementing comprehensive reforms to ensure this never happens again. The statement included specific commitments: mandatory bias training for all employees, implementation of real-time discrimination reporting systems, quarterly diversity metrics, and a formal partnership with minority aviation organizations. Captain Harris personally escorted Amara back to her seat, the same seat 2A she had been trying to occupy for over an hour. His hands shook slightly as he offered assistance with her coffee-stained belongings. Miss Washington, I want to personally apologize for my crew's behavior and my own failure to recognize what was happening. Amara looked up at him, noting the genuine remorse in his voice. Captain, this wasn't about personal failure. This was about systemic problems that require systemic solutions. The businessman in first floor had finished his comprehensive Twitter thread documenting the entire incident. His 2.3 million followers were sharing it across the aviation industry. Stock analysts were already discussing the potential impact on American Airlines' quarterly earnings. Patricia Williams approached with a fresh sweater, a first-class amenity kit that included premium clothing options. Miss Washington, we have shower facilities available if you'd like to clean up before departure. Thank you, Patricia. I appreciate the professional service. The contrast was stark. Patricia's approach demonstrated what customer service looked like without racial bias. Respectful, helpful, dignified. Officer Rodriguez returned with his supervisor, Agent Martinez from the FBI's Civil Rights Division. They conducted brief interviews with key witnesses, documenting the incident for potential federal investigation. "Miss Washington," Agent Martinez said quietly, "this appears to be a clear Title VII violation. Would you like to pursue federal charges?" Amara considered the question while passengers around her listened intently. "Agent Martinez, I believe corporate accountability will be more effective than criminal prosecution in this case. But I want this incident documented officially." "Understood. We'll file a complete report." The woman in 3C finally ended her Instagram live stream after nearly 2 hours of broadcasting. Her final viewer count: 15,847 people who had witnessed discrimination met with strategic corporate response. "Y'all," she said to her camera, "I've never seen anything like this." This woman just changed how airlines treat passengers forever. Within 6 hours, American Airlines had implemented the first phase of reforms. Diversity Check app deployment began across the fleet's 847 aircraft. The system allowed passengers to report discrimination incidents through their phones, with reports automatically routed to management and documented for federal oversight. Bias training schedules were published for all 47,000 customer-facing employees. The program included scenario-based learning, implicit bias recognition, and consequences for discriminatory behavior. A $50,000 scholarship fund was established in Amara's name, supporting minority students pursuing aviation careers. The first recipients would be announced within 30 days. The financial markets responded immediately. WashTech's stock price rose 8% on news of expanded airline partnerships. American Airlines stock dipped 3% as investors calculated the cost of discrimination reforms. But the real change was visible in employee behavior across the airline industry. Within 48 hours, 3 other major carriers proactively contacted WashTech about implementing similar discrimination reporting systems. Flight attendants at Delta, United, and Southwest received emergency briefings about the American Airlines incident. The message was clear: discrimination wouldn't be tolerated, and the financial consequences were severe. Captain Harris made a final announcement before departure. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the extended delay. American Airlines is committed to ensuring every passenger receives respectful, dignified service regardless of their background or appearance." The flight finally departed, 2 hours and 17 minutes late. But the delay had accomplished something unprecedented: real-time corporate accountability in response to discrimination. As the aircraft climbed to cruising altitude, Amara opened her laptop, now coffee-free thanks to Patricia's assistance. Her inbox was filled with messages from other executives who had seen the social media coverage. 3 Fortune 500 CEOs had requested meetings to discuss implementing similar accountability measures in their companies. 2 university business schools wanted to create case studies. Harvard Business Review had requested an interview about strategic response to workplace discrimination. The businessman in first floor approached during the flight. "Miss Washington, I'm David Kim, aviation industry analyst. I've been following your company's work. What happened today? It's going to change how the entire industry operates." Amara smiled. "David, what happened today was one woman sitting in her assigned seat and refusing to accept discrimination. The change comes from companies choosing accountability over excuses." By the time Flight 2847 landed, hashtag American Airlines reform was trending nationally. Amara's strategic response had become a blueprint for addressing corporate discrimination in real time. The incident would be studied in business schools as an example of how economic leverage, strategic thinking, and digital documentation could create immediate systemic change. Jennifer's termination became industry news. Her inability to find subsequent employment in aviation sent a clear message: discrimination had career-ending consequences. Michael's suspension evolved into early retirement. His pension was preserved, but his reputation in the industry was permanently damaged. Patricia Williams received a commendation for professional service and was promoted to training supervisor for the new bias prevention program. Most importantly, American Airlines discrimination complaints dropped 73% within 6 months. The Diversity Check app prevented dozens of potential incidents through early intervention and documentation. Other airlines adopted similar systems voluntarily, recognizing that discrimination was both morally wrong and financially catastrophic. Amara Washington had achieved something remarkable, turning personal humiliation into industry-wide reform through strategic response rather than emotional reaction. 6 months later, Amara Washington stood before a packed auditorium at Harvard Business School. The case study, Strategic Response to Workplace Discrimination, the American Airlines Incident, had become required reading in 3 MBA programs. The question isn't whether discrimination exists, she told the future business leaders. The question is how you respond when it happens to you. WashTech's stock had risen 23% since the incident. The expanded airline partnerships generated an additional $340 million in annual revenue. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was systemic. American Airlines' transformation had rippled across the entire aviation industry. Delta, United, Southwest, and JetBlue all implemented similar discrimination reporting systems. The Department of Transportation adopted AA's diversity protocols as recommended standards for all carriers. 3 other major airlines had proactively hired WashTech to audit their customer service protocols. No one wanted to become the next viral discrimination case with 8-figure financial consequences. The woman from Seat 3C, Keisha Thompson, had parlayed her viral live stream into a social justice platform with 847,000 followers. She regularly featured stories of everyday people standing up to discrimination with strategic thinking rather than emotional reactions. What Amara showed us, Keisha often told her audience, is that dignity combined with preparation beats anger every time. The businessman David Kim had written a comprehensive industry analysis titled The Economic Cost of Discrimination in Aviation. His research showed that bias incidents cost airlines an average of $4.2 million each in lost customers, legal fees, and reputation damage. Companies across industries began implementing Amara protocols, strategic response systems for addressing discrimination through documentation, economic leverage, and systematic reform rather than individual confrontation. Harvard Business Review published Amara's article, When Economic Power Meets Social Justice, which became their most shared piece of 2025. The core message resonated across corporate America. Discrimination wasn't just morally wrong, it was financially destructive. 3 Fortune 500 companies had restructured their diversity programs based on WashTech's model. Real accountability with measurable consequences, not symbolic gestures or feel-good workshops. Jennifer Morrison, the flight attendant who started it all, had struggled to find employment in any customer-facing role. Her LinkedIn profile, once confident and professional, now showed a gap in employment that no aviation company would bridge. The incident had become her digital scarlet letter, a permanent reminder that discrimination had permanent consequences. Michael Stevens had used his early retirement to write a memoir, How I Lost My Career in 1 Hour, A Manager's Guide to Unconscious Bias. The book became required reading in several airline training programs. Most remarkably, American Airlines customer satisfaction scores had improved 34% across all demographics. When employees knew discrimination had immediate, severe consequences, they treated everyone with professional respect. The Diversity Check app had documented and prevented 847 potential discrimination incidents across the industry. Real-time reporting with executive accountability created an environment where bias couldn't hide behind corporate bureaucracy. Amara's approach had proven that individual dignity, combined with strategic thinking and economic leverage, could create lasting social change. No protests, no lawsuits, no viral anger, just professional accountability with measurable results. The incident had also launched Amara's speaking career. She addressed corporate boards, university audiences, and civil rights organizations about strategic response to discrimination. Emotional reactions feel satisfying, she would tell audiences, but strategic responses create change. Choose strategy over satisfaction. Her advice had helped dozens of professionals navigate discrimination incidents with their careers and dignity intact. The Washington method became standard training in several corporations. Today, Flight 2847's route operates daily without incident. Patricia Williams, now Director of Inclusive Service Training, ensures that every crew member understands both the moral and financial imperatives of treating all passengers with dignity. The empty first-class seat that started everything has been filled thousands of times since then by passengers of every background, welcomed professionally regardless of their appearance or assumptions about their wealth. But the real legacy lives in the hundreds of discrimination incidents that never happened because employees knew they were being watched, documented, and held accountable. Amara Washington proved that when smart people face discrimination, they don't just fight back, they change the system. Her coffee-stained sweater had become a symbol of strategic resistance that created industry-wide transformation. These black stories remind us that the most touching stories often emerge from moments of adversity. When we share these real-life stories, we inspire others to respond to discrimination with dignity and intelligence. The best life stories teach us that strategic thinking combined with economic power creates more lasting change than anger alone ever could. Your story matters too. Have you witnessed discrimination that could have been handled differently? What systems need changing in your workplace or community? Share this story if you believe professional dignity creates better outcomes than confrontation. Comment below with your own experiences of turning adversity into opportunity. Hit subscribe for more real-life stories about people who used strategic thinking to create systemic change. Because sometimes the most powerful response to being looked down on is refusing to look down on yourself and making sure it never happens to anyone else.